Welcome back. It is Monday, March 2, 2026, and we've got another custom-tailored deep dive ready for you.
A really ambitious one today, too.
Oh, definitely.
Uh-huh.
Today's mission is ambitious because we are looking at a stack of sources you provided that is, frankly, massive.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about a really wide spectrum of material here.
Right. Breaking international news reports on geopolitical conflicts, transcripts from YouTube broadcasts, highly detailed political encyclopedias, and these incredibly dense, data-driven academic research papers.
And trying to find the through line in all of that was fascinating.
It was. But the unifying theme we found woven across all this disparate material is disruption.
Exactly.
We are looking at the mechanics of disruption as it stands today. We are going to start by looking at the immediate global shockwaves radiating out of the Middle East right now.
Events that are rattling global markets and stranding everyday citizens across the world, literally as we speak.
Yeah. And then from there, we are going to pivot closer to home to examine some intense domestic political friction happening right now within India's national parties.
Specifically looking at how those big national alliances fracture on a local level.
Right. And then finally, we will be spending the bulk of our time unpacking a massive, once-in-a-generation political disruption happening in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu ahead of its 2026 assembly elections. Okay, let's unpack
It
this.
sounds like a plan.
But before we jump into the deep end, I really need to make an important disclaimer.
A very necessary one for today's topic.
Yeah, the sources you've shared with us contain highly politically charged viewpoints that span the entire political spectrum.
We are looking at left-wing perspectives, right-wing platforms, centrist arguments, fierce regional nationalism.
All of it. So our job here is to impartially report on these viewpoints so you can deeply understand the original source material.
Right, we are not taking sides.
We are absolutely not endorsing any political party, whether that is the BJP, the DMK, the Congress, the TVK, or the NTK.
We are just your guides to the data you wanted us to explore.
Exactly. So let's start with that shattered global status quo. The breaking news from this weekend, March 1st and 2nd, paints just a staggering picture.
It really does.
According to the reports, the U.S. and Israel have engaged in attacks on Iran. And in retaliation, Iranian airstrikes and drones have targeted the United Arab Emirates.
Specifically hitting the major hubs of Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Right. And I want to start by asking about the psychological impact of this. Because the UAE, it isn't just another country on a map. It has a very, very specific global brand.
It absolutely does, and this military engagement is a direct strike on that carefully cultivated global image.
How so?
Well, for decades, the UAE and Dubai in particular has aggressively branded itself as this safe, sunny, tax-free oasis situated in a historically turbulent region.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's marketed.
Think about the messaging they project to the world. It is built entirely on predictability, luxury, and safety. That branding is specifically designed to attract wealthy expats, global corporations, and millions of tourists.
And this weekend, that image of an impenetrable oasis was fundamentally fractured.
Completely.
The details in the sources really underscore that fracture. We aren't just talking about military bases being targeted out in the desert.
No, the reports detail how debris from intercepted weapons caused actual fires at the Fairmont Hotel on the Palm Jumeirah.
And for those listening who might not be familiar with Dubai's geography, the Palm Jumeirah is that world-famous artificial archipelago shaped like a palm tree.
Right, it is the absolute pinnacle of exclusive luxury real estate.
We are talking about incidents happening near the Burj Al Arab, the iconic sail-shaped hotel, and the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world.
And in Abu Dhabi, the airport itself was hit, leaving one dead and several injured.
It's just wild. How does a region built on safety recover when tourists are watching missiles from their luxury hotel balconies?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it creates a massive vulnerability, and that vulnerability is twofold.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the geopolitical side first. The UAE has had to completely close its airspace and shutter its embassy in Tehran, pulling its diplomats out.
Which is a huge reversal.
Huge. It completely undermines years of delicate diplomatic efforts the UAE had been making recently to de-escalate tensions with Iran and position themselves as a neutral mediator.
Right. And the second vulnerability
Is economic, and this is where it stops being a localized Middle Eastern issue and becomes a direct problem for everyone listening.
because of the location.
Exactly. Geographically, the UAE sits right next to the Strait of Hormuz. Analysts in the research papers you provided describe this specific body of water as the aorta of the global energy system.
Wow. That is an incredibly evocative metaphor.
It really paints a picture.
Calling it the aorta implies that if it gets severed, the whole system just bleeds out.
And the math backs up the metaphor. Roughly 1/5 of all global oil and liquefied natural gas flows through that narrow maritime choke point.
One
Yeah. So when violence erupts near the Strait of Hormuz, it's not an abstract geopolitical chess match. It's an immediate, visceral economic shock to the global system.
And we saw that immediately, right?
The markets reacted instantly this weekend. U.S. futures fell 1.7% right out of the gate.
And oil?
Oil prices have absolutely soared. The U.S. benchmark jumped 9% to $73 a barrel, and Brent crude spiked nearly 10% to almost $80 a barrel.
That is a massive jump for a single weekend.
Meanwhile, gold, which is the classic safe haven asset that investors flee to when they are panicked, rose 3.4%.
Let's pause on those oil numbers for a second because I want to make sure we trace the line from a crude oil benchmark directly to the listener's wallet. A spike to $80 a barrel doesn't just mean a few extra dollars at the gas pump, does it?
Not at all. A prolonged conflict in this specific region means the baseline cost of production for almost everything globally goes up.
It cascades through the entire global supply chain.
Precisely. If energy costs more, it costs more to manufacture a t-shirt in Bangladesh, it costs more to ship an iPhone from China, and it costs more to transport groceries to your local supermarket.
So the inflation is just immediate and pervasive.
Yes. But beyond the economic cascade, the sources show how geopolitical disruption cascades down to individual human lives in a matter of hours.
The juxtaposition of the stories in these reports is just wild to me.
It's very jarring.
On one hand, you have an anecdote from a British racehorse trainer, Jamie Osborne.
Right.
He was in Dubai for the Emirates Super Saturday, which is this incredibly luxurious sporting event. He described standing the pristine paddock of a racecourse, looking up and watching missiles being intercepted in the sky.
It's a surreal clash of extreme luxury and active warfare.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the immediate crisis of everyday migrant workers. Hundreds of South Indians are suddenly stranded.
And this is where the human cost becomes chaotic and very, very real. Because the airspace was abruptly closed, thousands of people are trapped in transit. Yeah, the sources show that government helplines in the Indian states of Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu are being completely flooded with panicked calls.
And these aren't wealthy tourists.
No, these are mostly blue-collar migrant workers who form the backbone of the Gulf economy or their families back home trying to reach them.
There's a particularly harrowing story in the stack about a woman named Suman Galaprashant in Mangaluru, India.
That one really stood out.
Her husband has been working as a mechanic in Kuwait for 23 years, stationed right near the border. The report describes her talking to him on the phone, desperately trying to figure out if he should try to find a flight home.
And while they are speaking, she can literally hear the air raid sirens going off in the background on his end.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Or consider the story of the 3-year-old girl from Kerala.
That was a logistical nightmare.
She was traveling with her parents from Azerbaijan to Kuwait, but because of the airspace closure, their flight had to make an emergency diversion. She ended up stranded at the Karachi airport in Pakistan, which is a country India has incredibly tense relations with, before they were finally routed to Sri Lanka.
Those stories perfectly illustrate how the abstract concept of international relations instantly becomes a very tangible crisis.
1 minute you are reading a headline about drone strikes.
And the next minute, your family members are stranded in a war zone and you are relying on local state governments to frantically coordinate with the Federal Ministry of External Affairs just to orchestrate an evacuation.
It's terrifying. But, we just saw how international alliances and regional stability are fracturing under the pressure of global conflict.
Right.
But you don't need military strikes to break an alliance. As we pivot to our next set of sources, we see domestic political actors in India busy creating their own localized shockwaves.
Yes, domestic friction is heating up.
Let's examine the national political friction happening right now, specifically looking at the Congress Party, which is India's main national opposition party.
They are fighting intense battles against their own supposed allies on two very different state fronts.
This is a fascinating dynamic to unpack. We are looking at two distinct situations in the southern states of Kerala and Telangana.
Right, so on a national level, the Congress Party and the left-wing parties are ostensibly part of a broader coalition designed to oppose the ruling BJP government in New Delhi.
But on a state level,
they are openly at each other's throats.
Let's start with the situation in Wayan, Kerala. The region recently suffered devastating landslides, and as you can imagine, rehabilitation and rebuilding are massive, deeply sensitive issues.
Very sensitive.
MP Priyanka Gandhi, a major national figure for the Congress Party, is on the ground there. But she's making a very specific, very calculated political point.
Yes. She stated that the Congress Party feels they do not need to route their rehabilitation funds through the left-led state government.
Instead, the Congress Party is building its own houses directly for the survivors.
And the tension this caused is just palpable.
The sources note that at a government event handing over some of the state-built houses, a Congress MLA, P. Siddiq, was actually heckled and shouted down by left political workers while he was speaking.
Which is a huge public embarrassment.
So what is the strategy behind bypassing the state machinery like that?
It is a massive political statement of self-reliance and distrust. By refusing to pool their resources with the state government to deliver relief, Priyanka Gandhi is communicating to the voters of Wayanad that the Congress Party is the only entity they can actually rely on.
It signals a profound lack of trust in the state apparatus controlled by the left.
It's essentially a way of saying we will take care of our own constituents directly because we do not trust the ruling state party to distribute these funds fairly or efficiently.
It is a localized disruption of the concept of a unified opposition front.
Exactly.
I want to push back on that a bit, though. If they are allies nationally, doesn't openly undermining the left-led state government in Kerala weaken their overall national narrative?
In theory, yes, it does. But it highlights a fundamental truth about coalition politics in India, or really anywhere.
Which is?
Local political survival almost always trumps national coalition unity.
Ah, right.
The Congress and the left might need each other in the parliament in New Delhi to form a viable opposition bloc, but in the State Assembly of Kerala, they are direct, fierce competitors for the exact same voter base.
So they can't let the left look like the sole saviors.
They cannot afford to let the left take all the credit for disaster rehabilitation. They have to carve out their own parallel relief effort, even if it causes massive friction.
And that friction is spilling over into other states, too. Look at what is happening in Telangana.
The rhetoric there is even harsher.
Kerala's chief minister, Pinarayi Vijayan, who is a towering figure in the CPIM, the Communist Party of India, Marxist, has come out swinging against the newly formed Congress-led government in Telangana.
He is accusing them of running a bulldozer Raj.
The reports detail a specific incident where the Telangana government evicted 3,000 people and demolished 700 homes in Khammam, reportedly without giving prior notice to the residents.
And the sources specifically note that these were houses built on Bhutan land.
Before we analyze the politics of that, we really need to contextualize what Bhutan land is for you, the listener, because it carries massive historical and emotional weight in India.
It's a very specific type of land.
Right. The Bhutan movement, or the land gift movement, was a historic voluntary land reform initiative started in the 1950s by Vinoba Pave.
The idea was to persuade wealthy landowners to voluntarily give up a portion of their land to be distributed to landless, impoverished families.
So it's land that fundamentally represents a promise of equity and survival for the absolute poorest demographics.
Exactly. So when the state government comes in with bulldozers and demolishes 700 homes built on land specifically designated for the landless, the optics are just catastrophic.
And Chief Minister Vijayan is jumping right on those optics.
His rhetoric here is incredibly sharp and weaponized. By using the phrase bulldozer Raj, he is essentially accusing the Congress Party of mirroring the hardline, punitive demolition policies often associated with BJP-ruled northern states.
He explicitly called it a crude politics of displacement.
He's asking how a party like Congress, which claims progressive, pro-poor credentials on a national level, can implement such inhuman measures locally.
He's actively contrasting the Congress's harsh actions in Telangana with his own government's policies in Kerala of granting land titles to the landless.
So we have a scenario where supposed national allies are publicly tearing into each other over housing, disaster rehabilitation, and evictions.
It paints a picture of extreme fragility within national alliances.
It absolutely does. The state-level infighting we are seeing suggests that maintaining cohesiveness in a national alliance is incredibly difficult when the local stakes, control over state resources, land, and voter loyalty are this high.
And that idea of localized disruption, of traditional political structures breaking down, sets up the main event of today's deep dive perfectly.
The situation in Tamil Nadu.
Exactly. We are going to turn our focus entirely to the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Based on the academic papers, political encyclopedias, and news transcripts in our source stack, the entire political landscape of Tamil Nadu is undergoing a massive structural transformation.
Right as we head into the 2026 assembly elections.
The traditional alliance math that has governed the state for half a century is essentially being thrown out the window.
And to truly understand the magnitude of the disruption happening in Tamil Nadu in 2026, we first have to ground ourselves in what this state actually is.
Let's do that for our global listeners.
Mhm.
Tamil Nadu is not just a province.
Not at all. With a population of over 80 million people, its economy is larger than many European countries.
It is an industrial powerhouse, a massive hub for automobile manufacturing, IT, textile.
But more importantly, it has an incredibly distinct, fiercely protected cultural and linguistic identity. They don't just speak Tamil. The Tamil language is the bedrock of their political consciousness.
And that unique cultural identity has dictated their politics for generations. The research papers lay out the baseline clearly. For roughly 60 years, ever since 1967, Tamil Nadu politics has been defined by an unbreakable Dravidian duopoly.
Power has almost exclusively oscillated between two colossal regional parties.
The DMK, which is currently in power, and the AIADMK.
And national parties like the Congress or the BJP have historically been entirely sidelined here.
They are forced to act as junior partners, relying on alliances with these two regional giants just to maintain a tiny foothold in the state.
That is the status quo. But the academic papers define the upcoming 2026 election as a generational pivot.
The fundamental question is why now? Why is a 60-year-old system suddenly vulnerable?
The data points to a massive demographic shift. The electorate has fundamentally changed. You have a massive youth demographic coming of age.
The numbers are staggering. The 2019 electoral data alone noted 0.89 million first-time voters entering the rolls.
That's nearly 1 million young people in a single cycle.
And the psychology of those voters is totally different. These are young adults who have no historical memory of the early Dravidian movement of the 1960s.
They weren't alive for the massive anti-Hindi agitation protests that originally brought the DMK to power.
They are completely disconnected from the traditional, almost tribal loyalties that dictated how their parents or grandparents voted.
And their attitudes toward governance and civic life are distinct. The academic research provides a fascinating snapshot from a 2019 survey of voters in the state looking at their specific anxieties.
Yeah, one data point that stood out to me was a strong, persistent preference for traditional ballot voting over electronic voting machines, or EVMs.
And a complete rejection of online voting proposals.
I found that detail fascinating. In a state that is a massive IT hub, the voters don't trust digital voting.
It indicates a deep-seated anxiety about electoral trust and transparency. They want to physically see their vote recorded.
And the research also points out a very revealing rural-urban divide regarding civic awareness.
Yes. When surveyed, urban voters showed a surprising lack of knowledge about their own ration cards. The state issued documents that guarantee subsidized food and commodities compared to rural voters.
Why does that matter in the context of an election?
The paper notes this as a serious structural issue. It suggests that in the rapid rush of urbanization, city dwellers might be losing touch with their basic civic rights and their direct connection to state welfare entitlements.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, rural voters remain acutely aware of exactly what the state owes them and how the government functions on a daily basis.
So that kind of disconnect, where a massive chunk of the urban population feels disconnected from the state apparatus, is incredibly fertile ground for political disruption.
Exactly. But the demographic shift and the urban disconnect are only part of the story.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The biggest factor driving this pivot, according to the sources, is a massive, gaping leadership vacuum.
A historic vacuum.
For decades, the DMK and the AIADMK were led by absolute titans of Indian politics. M. Karunanidhi for the DMK and Jayalalitha for the AIADMK.
They weren't just politicians, they were massive cultural phenomena.
They possessed an unquestionable mass appeal, an almost messianic pull over their followers.
But both of those titans have passed away within the last decade.
And the academic analysis suggests that the current leadership of both parties, chiefly M.K. Stalin for the DMK and Adapati K. Palaniswamy for the AIADMK, while highly organized and politically shrewd, simply lack that same gravitational cult of personality charisma.
They are seen as administrators and political managers, not demigods.
And as the saying goes, nature abhors a vacuum, and so does politics.
That's very true.
The absence of those larger-than-life figures has birthed a highly volatile third pole in Tamil Nadu politics. Except, it's not just one new player trying to fill the void.
We are seeing two distinct radical alternatives capturing the imagination of that massive youth demographic.
On one side, you have the explosive, high-glamour arrival of Thalapathy Vijay and his newly formed party, the Tamalaga Vetri Kazagam, or TVK.
And on the other side, you have the slow, disciplined, intensely fiery rise of Seaman and his name, Tamilar Kachi, the NTK.
And we cannot underestimate the public appetite for these alternatives. That same 2019 academic survey highlighted a grim reality.
Yes, a significant portion of voters view the current state of Tamil Nadu politics as very pathetic.
Very pathetic. That's a strong phrase for an academic survey.
It is. They feel the existing duopoly is driven entirely by power hoarding, dynastic succession, and the personal financial interests of politicians, rather than any genuine public concern or ideological drive.
Let's put you, the listener, in the shoes of a Tamil Nadu voter right now. Imagine you have lived your entire life under the rule of just two parties.
It's all you've ever known.
Every election cycle is just a flip of the same coin. You vote one out because you are tired of them, and you bring the other one back.
And suddenly, two completely new, radical options appear, both promising to tear the whole corrupt system down to the studs.
How do you decide if it's finally time to break the wheel? Let's dissect the first of those disruptors, because his entry into politics is like something out of a movie script.
Literally.
Let's talk about Thalapathy Vijay and the TVK.
The transition from cinema to politics is a well-worn path in Tamil Nadu. Both Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha had deep roots in the film industry.
But the scale of Joseph Vijay, universally known simply as Thalapathy or Commander Vijay, is on another level in the modern digital age.
He is arguably the biggest, highest-paid actor in Tamil cinema today.
For years, he operated a massive, highly organized fan club, which he formally started in 2009.
And they didn't just celebrate his movie releases, they engaged in coordinated social welfare activities.
But in February 2024, he flipped the switch. He transitioned that massive fan club network into a formal, registered political party, the TVK.
And the numbers the sources report are mind-boggling.
The party claims to have registered over 15 million members through their app.
15 million.
And they are currently in the process of appointing 70,000 booth agents across the state to manage the logistics of Election Day.
The sheer scale is staggering, but what's fascinating here is the ideology he is claiming, because it is highly disruptive to the current political math.
He has branded his core platform as secular social justice.
Right.
What does that actually mean in the context of Tamil politics?
It essentially positions the TVK as a center-left egalitarian force. He is trying to appeal to the broad base of voters who appreciate the social welfare policies of the Dravidian parties, but are tired of the corruption.
He was very precise in naming his enemies during his first massive public rally in the town of Vikravandi, which reportedly drew a crowd of over 300,000 people.
A massive turnout.
He didn't speak in generalities. He explicitly labeled the national ruling party, the BJP, as his ideological opponent, pushing back against right-wing nationalism.
And simultaneously, he labeled the state ruling party, the DMK, as his political adversary, attacking their governance and alleged corruption.
He is absolutely not pulling any punches. He is explicitly framing the 2026 election not just as a regular cycle, but as a historic turning point.
He's comparing his entry into politics to the pivotal historic elections of 1967 and 1977, which completely reshaped the state's destiny.
And he is leveraging modern tools to build his coalition. He launched the TVK app to bypass traditional media conglomerates, many of which are owned by rival political families and connect directly with voters.
However, the sources note that this explosive growth hasn't been without severe growing pains.
The transition from managing movie fans to managing massive political crowds is dangerous.
There was a terrible tragedy in September 2025.
Yeah. During a massive TVK public rally in Karur, there was a crowd crush that resulted in the deaths of 41 people.
It was a horrific event that led to an immediate CBI Central Bureau of Investigation inquiry.
The reports mentioned that Vijay personally paid out significant financial compensation to the victims' families, but it serves as an incredibly harsh reality check.
It highlights the dangerous, chaotic reality of mass political mobilization on the ground, away from the safety of an app interface.
It does. But politically, what is most fascinating to analyze in the research is how the TVK is handling its symbolic strategy to build its voter base.
In Tamil Nadu, the historical figures a party associates itself with operate as a kind of ideological shorthand. It tells the voters everything they need to know about who you represent.
Right. When Vijay unveiled his party headquarters, he didn't just put up pictures of himself.
No, he unveiled busts of five very specific historical mentors: Periyar, B.R. Ambedkar, K. Kamaraj, Rani Vlunachiar, and Anjalai Amal.
I really wanted to break that down because to an outsider, it just sounds like a list of historical names.
Right.
But the academic papers call this a brilliantly calculated polysemic strategy.
Right. Yeah.
Can you explain what that means and who these figures are?
Sure. A polysemic strategy means crafting a message that speaks with multiple distinct meanings to multiple different audiences simultaneously.
It's about building a massive tent.
Exactly. Let's look at the figures. First, he claims E.V. Ramasamy, universally known as Periyar.
The founding father of the Dravidian movement.
Yes, he was a fierce anti-caste crusader and rationalist. By placing Periyar's bust, Vijay instantly signals to the core Dravidian voter base that he respects the foundational ideology of social justice and anti-Brahmanism.
Okay, so that covers the traditional Dravidian base. What about B.R. Ambedkar?
Ambedkar is the chief architect of the Indian Constitution and a towering global icon for Dalit rights.
Right.
By elevating Ambedkar alongside Periyar, Vijay is directly reaching out to Dalit voters and marginalized communities, emphasizing constitutional equality and legal protections against caste discrimination.
Then there is K. Kamaraj. The sources suggest this is a really fascinating inclusion.
It is, because Kamaraj wasn't a Dravidian leader. He was a legendary Congress Party chief minister in the 1950s and 60s.
That's interesting.
Kamaraj represents an era of politics renowned for absolute administrative honesty, simplicity, and the massive statewide expansion of public education.
So by claiming Kamaraj, Vijay is making a direct play for older voters and middle-class voters who are nostalgic for an era of clean, uncorrupted governance, contrasting himself with the modern parties.
Precisely. And finally, he includes two women, Rani Vlunachiar and Anjalai Amma.
Rani Vlunachiar was an 18th century queen who waged a fierce war against the British East India Company.
And Anjalai Amal was a prominent freedom fighter who faced brutal imprisonment.
So including them is a powerful dual-purpose appeal.
It is a direct outreach to women voters, signaling that women's empowerment is core to his platform, and it is a nod to militant, uncompromising Tamil resistance.
So you see the polysemic strategy. In one row of statues, he appeals to rationalists, Dalits, anti-corruption voters, women, and Tamil nationalists.
He is trying to build a coalition of every marginalized or dissatisfied group in the state under one massive umbrella.
And he isn't just relying on statues and star power. I think this is where the discussion of parasocial relationships comes in. Can a fan's love for a cinema hero's on-screen persona survive the messy, compromising reality of civic governance?
The research papers note that unlike past actor-turned-politicians in the state, people who relied purely on their on-screen charisma and essentially just waited for the votes to roll in Vijay is actively, methodically institutionalizing his party.
This is a critical distinction. He realizes that cinematic charisma only gets you through the front door. To actually win, you need political machinery.
The sources detail how he formed a 12-member manifesto committee to draft his policy platform.
And if you look closely at the names on that committee, he isn't appointing movie directors or fan club presidents.
He is bringing in seasoned, hard-nosed political defectors, people like JCD Prabhakar and K.A. Sangatayan, who are veteran, battle-tested operatives formerly with the AIADMK.
So he is pairing the massive grassroots enthusiasm of his fan base with the experienced, cynical political mechanics of veteran operators.
He is building the actual boring machinery of a political party.
And his rhetoric is perfectly tailored to slice through the noise and appeal to a younger, digitally native audience. I absolutely love this quote from the sources.
The Payasan quote.
Yes. Vijay was on stage mocking the constant vitriolic online bickering between the ruling state party, the DMK, and the national ruling party, the BJP. He dismissed their entire social media war as fascism versus payasam.
It's an incredibly effective, memorable piece of rhetoric. Payasam is a traditional sweet South Indian dessert.
By calling it fascism versus payasam, he is framing their grand ideological battles as a trivial, elite, out-of-touch game played by wealthy politicians on Twitter.
It's a sweet distraction, while the real material issues of the working class are completely ignored.
He stated plainly in his speeches that money-minded people should be out of politics, firmly positioning himself as the clean outsider alternative to a corrupt establishment.
Let me play devil's advocate here, because the academic analysts in our sources raise a massive red flag regarding the TVK's strategy.
What's the flag?
They ask, can a digital app-driven party, even one claiming 15 million members, actually survive the grueling, deeply unglamorous reality of booth-level election day mechanics?
When I see that 15 million members claim, I have to ask, does the data actually back up that those are unique voting age individuals living in Tamil Nadu? Or is that just a vanity metric of app downloads globally?
Likes, retweets, and app downloads do not automatically translate to people standing in the hot sun for 3 hours in a line at a rural polling booth.
That is the multi-million-dollar question. The conversion rate from digital fan to mobilized voter is historically very low.
And that skepticism brings us perfectly to the other disruptor in this race.
Because while the TVK is banking on overnight digital virality, the other party has spent over a decade focusing on exactly that kind of grueling, unglamorous, on-the-ground discipline. Let's examine Seaman and the Nam Tamlar Kachi, the NTK.
The NTK is a completely different beast. It was revived in 2010 by Seaman, who is also a former film director and actor, though not on the superstar scale of VJ.
They haven't had an explosive, massive launch event like the TVK. They have been engaged in a slow, relentless grassroots build.
Just look at the progression of their vote share in the data provided. They secured 1.06% of the vote in the 2016 assembly elections.
Fast forward to 2021, they climbed to 6.89%.
And the most recent 2024 Lok Sabha parliamentary elections, they pushed up to 8.19%.
And that 8.19% isn't evenly spread. They performed incredibly well in the central regions of the state, like Tiruchi, where they actually pushed established candidates from major alliances down to fourth place in certain constituencies.
That shows concentrated structural growth.
Right.
But what really defines the NTK is their ideology. It is rigid, uncompromising, and totally unambiguous.
Pure Tamil nationalism.
Yes.
How does pure Tamil nationalism differ from the Dravidian ideology that has ruled the state for 60 years? To an outsider, they might sound similar.
To Seaman and the NTK, they are fundamentally opposed. Seaman completely and utterly rejects the Dravidian identity. He argues that the term Dravidian is an artificial geographic loophole, a term that encompasses other southern states that historically allowed non-Tamils, particularly Telugu and Malayali speakers, to assimilate and ultimately rule over the ethnic Tamil people in Tamil Nadu.
His core demand is absolute linguistic and ethnic purism. Only ethnic Tamils should have the right to govern the Tamil land.
It's a highly radical nativist platform, but their economic and social policies are equally radical.
The sources outline that they advocate for what they call green politics.
This isn't just about recycling. They propose a completely self-reliant, insulated agrarian economy, even going so far as to suggest Soviet-style socialization and state control of agriculture.
They are staunchly focused on hyper-local issues, like demanding the retrieval of the Kachativu Island, a small island ceded to Sri Lanka in the 1970s to protect the livelihoods of Tamil fishermen.
And structurally, they're doing things no other party in India is doing. The sources highlight that since 2019, the NTK has consistently allocated exactly 50% of their electoral tickets to women candidates.
Wait, a strict 50% mandate for women candidates.
Across the board.
Across the board.
In the landscape of Indian electoral politics, where patriarchy is deeply entrenched, that is virtually unheard of.
It is entirely unprecedented at that scale, and it builds massive, quiet loyalty among women voters who feel ignored by the patriarchal structures of the older parties.
The contrast between the TVK and the NTK is incredibly stark. The TVK is this explosive, celebrity-driven, center-left coalition trying to be everything to everyone.
And the NTK is a slow, disciplined, ideologically rigid movement relying on ethnic economics and deeply emotional historical appeals.
A massive part of Seaman's emotional appeal centers on the profound suffering of Sri Lankan Tamils during the civil war there, an issue he claims the Dravidian parties abandoned.
Seaman's rhetoric isn't cool or detached, it is visceral. He talks about having a fire in the heart where sparks turn to words that represent the accumulated pain and betrayal of thousands of years of Tamil history. So what happens when the massive, undeniable celebrity momentum of telepathy VJ crashes headlong into the entrenched, fiery, uncompromising nationalism of Seaman?
You don't get an alliance, you get an absolute ideological collision.
They are currently fighting a brutal war over the very definition of what it means to be Tamil in 2026.
The major flashpoint for this collision happened at that massive TVK rally in Vikravandi.
Vijay, attempting to build his broad, inclusive coalition, made a philosophical statement that he thought would bridge the gap. He claimed to his massive audience that his ideology combined both Dravidam and Tamil nationalism, calling them the two eyes of the land.
He was saying essentially we can have both social justice and ethnic pride.
And Seaman went absolutely ballistic.
The sources show him vehemently attacking Vijay for this attempt at synthesis. He didn't just disagree, he publicly branded Vijay his ideological enemy.
Seaman asked the crowd, how can poison and the medicine to cure poison be the same? How can a hero and a villain be the same?
He completely dismissed Vijay's attempt to merge the two ideologies as a rotten egg, warning Vijay that if you try to stand in the middle of the road to please everyone, you are eventually going to get hit by a lorry.
So what does this all mean? Why is Seaman so aggressively opposed to a compromise that might actually help defeat the ruling party?
Because it exposes the core philosophical and existential dispute of this election. Vijay is trying to play the role of the centrist disruptor. He wants to keep the highly popular, state-subsidized welfare model of Dravidian politics, but infuse it with a renewed, youthful sense of Tamil pride, appealing to the broadest possible base.
While Seaman demands absolute ideological purity.
Right. For Seaman, Dravidianism isn't a flawed ally, it is the ultimate enemy. He asserts that the Dravidian parties remained quiet and complicit during the final brutal slaughter of Sri Lankan Tamils in 2009, while Tamil nationalism was the only force that actually cried for them and fought for them.
For Seaman, telling a Tamil voter you can merge Dravidianism and Tamil nationalism is intellectually and morally bankrupt.
But beneath the high-minded philosophy and the historical grievances, there is raw, calculating political anxiety.
The NTK is terrified.
They are. They have spent 15 long years slowly cultivating a dedicated anti-establishment, anti-DMK youth vote. And now they're watching TVK's massive celebrity appeal threaten to lure that exact demographic away overnight.
Exactly. It's a battle for market share of the angry youth vote.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see the generational and stylistic divide in how they communicate this rivalry to the public.
Vijay is deliberately maintaining this cool, detached cinema hero persona. When he responds to critics, he uses casual, youthful slang, calling out "wrong, bro" to his opponents from the stage.
He refuses to get down into the mud.
Seaman, on the other hand, operates entirely in the mud. He uses these visceral, violent metaphors of poison, villains, and rotten eggs. They're speaking two entirely different languages of disruption.
But while these two disruptors are busy fighting each other over the youth vote, the established giants, the DMK and the AIADMK, are not just sitting back in their headquarters watching the show.
Not at all.
They are fighting back. And they are doing it with the cold, hard, unglamorous mechanics of entrenched political power. Let's look at the AIEDMK's strategy.
The research details how they are running what is described as a highly granular, data-driven campaign to find missing votes.
What exactly does that look like on the ground?
This is where we see the difference between a movement and a machine. The AIADMK is taking raw booth-level data from the 2021 state assembly elections and comparing it directly, line by line, to the 2024 parliamentary elections.
Give me an example.
Imagine a specific polling booth in a place like Vedaranyam, which is a rural coastal town. If the data shows that their party received exactly 124 fewer votes in that specific booth in 2024 compared to 2021, they don't just shrug and write it off as a general anti-incumbency trend.
They dispatch local embedded community members directly to the specific households in that neighborhood to conduct what they call doorstep diplomacy.
They're trying to find out exactly why those 124 specific individuals stayed home or switched their vote, and they are using personal relationships to win them back one by one.
And they aren't just showing up empty-handed. They are bringing a massive, highly targeted list of populist promises directly to those doorsteps.
The AIADMK is leaning heavily into economic relief.
They are promising 3 free cooking gas cylinders a year to households, increasing the state old age pension to 2,000 rupees a month, pledging to waive education loans entirely.
And even offering a 10 lakh rupee salasham, which is about 1 million rupees for families who suffered deaths related to Jallikattu.
We should quickly explain Jallikattu for you listening outside of India. It is a highly traditional, deeply revered bull-taming sport played during the Pongal Harvest Festival in Tamil Nadu.
It is fiercely dangerous, and injuries or deaths do occur. By offering a state solution for it, the AIADMK is directly signaling their protection of traditional rural Tamil culture, tying cultural pride to direct financial compensation.
So they are targeting the immediate daily financial stress of the voters. And on the other side of the establishment, you have the ruling DMK alliance.
They are relying on high level political chess.
The sources detail how Chief Minister M.K. Stalin pulled off a masterstroke of traditional political maneuvering in February 2026 by officially integrating a former AIADMK heavyweight, O. Selvam, widely known as OPS, directly into the DMK fold.
That is a massive seismic shift in the state's political landscape. OPS wasn't just a mid level manager, he was a former chief minister for the AIADMK. He was Jayalalitha's absolute most trusted lieutenant.
Why would the DMK want a former rival leader in their ranks?
It's all about caste calculus and regional geography. By absorbing OPS, the DMK is strategically shoring up their geographic weaknesses in the southern districts of Tamil Nadu.
OPS belongs to the Muklathor community, which is a massive, dominant, and politically crucial caste cluster in the south.
The DMK has historically struggled to win over the Muklathor vote. By bringing OPS in, they are hoping to secure that voting bloc.
This is a direct, calculated countermeasure to Thalapathy Vijay and the TVK, who've been campaigning heavily and drawing massive crowds in those exact same southern districts.
However, the sources show the DMK isn't without its own severe internal headaches. Running a massive alliance requires keeping everyone fed.
The documents mention serious alliance drama brewing. Junior partners in the DMK alliance, specifically the National Congress Party, and the VCK, which is a very prominent Dalit political party in the state, are allegedly flirting with the TVK.
They're reportedly opening back channels to VJ's camp.
Officially, in public, they all claim the DMK Congress alliance remains a steel fortress. But the threat of defecting to the hot new disruptor is a very powerful negotiating tool to pressure the DMK into granting them more seats to contest in the upcoming election.
This raises an important question. How do you beat a movie star with 15 million rabid fans, a shiny new app, and massive stadium rallies?
Based on the data, you beat them with clipboards, demographic math, and free gas cylinders.
The established powers do not try to out-charisma the disruptor. That's a losing game.
They fight digital disruption with hyperlocal organization and direct, tangible economic incentives. The AIADMK's populist strategy specifically targets the relentless financial burdens of female homemakers, the rising cost of electricity, the price of basic kitchen commodities.
If a party operative can convince the female head of a household that voting for the AIADMK guarantees her 3 free gas cylinders a year, that creates an economic ripple effect through the entire family's voting behavior.
It is very, very hard for a theoretical, ideological argument about pure Tamil identity to overcome the immediate promise of free cooking fuel.
Notice how completely different the battlefields are. The disruptors Vijay and Seaman are fighting an ideological war on Twitter, in massive stadiums, and on custom-built apps.
A political establishment is fighting a tactical war in the living room over the price of a gas cylinder and the micromanagement of caste demographics in southern districts.
And that stark contrast brings us directly to the cold, unforgiving mathematical reality of the 2026 election.
The academic research provides some highly sobering projections for the disruptors. Let's look at the numbers the models are currently projecting.
According to the advanced polling models in your sources, the ruling DMK alliance is projected to maintain a lead, capturing roughly 40 to 46% of the total vote share.
The AIADMK alliance is projected as the principal challenger, securing around 35 to 40%.
And the combined force of the two disruptors, the TVK and the NTK, is projected to capture a block of about 10 to 15% of the vote.
Wait, let me stop you there. Only 10 to 15% combined. I have seen claims placarded all over social media by TVK supporters insisting that they alone, as a brand new party, command a 28% vote share.
The academic paper explicitly addresses that viral 28% claim, and it dismisses it completely.
Oh, really?
The researchers call the 28% figure scientifically and logically doubtful. For a brand new party to debut at 28% in a deeply entrenched system like Tamil Nadu, it would require a total simultaneous systemic collapse of both the DMK and the AIEDMK's core multi-generational voter bases.
And the historical data and current ground reports simply do not support that kind of apocalyptic collapse happening.
That 28% number is almost certainly internal campaign propaganda based on inflated social media metrics and app downloads, not statistically sound, randomized polling.
Okay, so let's accept the academic projection of a 10 to 15% block for the disruptors. Because India uses a first past the post, or FTTP, electoral system, those percentages dictate a very specific, sometimes counterintuitive outcome.
It does.
Can you explain to the listener why that 10 to 15% block is so critical, even if it's not enough to win outright?
Absolutely. Think of a first past the post system like a foot race. You don't need to finish the race under a certain time limit, you just have to run one step faster than the guy in second place.
You do not need a 51% absolute majority of the votes in a constituency to win the seat.
Because the total vote is fractured among many different parties, a candidate might win a seat with only 35% of the vote, as long as the next closest candidate only gets 32%. Statewide, a lead of just 4 to 7% over your main rival is usually enough to secure a massive, sweeping majority of the total seats in the assembly.
So if the DMK is capturing 45% of the vote and the AIADMK is capturing 38%, the DMK doesn't just win narrowly, they win in an absolute landslide of seats.
Exactly. And this is exactly where the disruptors face their brutal math problem.
What's the problem?
If Thalapathy, Vijay, and Seaman were to somehow swallow their immense pride, bridge their ideological divide, and form a pre-election alliance, consolidating that entire 10 to 15% anti-establishment bloc, the model suggests they could actually win anywhere from 15 to 30 legislative seats.
In a tight race between the giants, winning 30 seats could be enough to deny anyone an absolute majority.
Yeah. It would create a hung assembly, giving the disruptors immense king-making power to dictate terms.
But as we just spent the last 20 minutes discussing, Seaman and Vijay are viciously at each other's throats. They are calling each other rotten eggs and villains. They are absolutely not allying.
And because they refuse to ally and are fighting each other for the same youth vote, the math fundamentally changes.
If they split that 10 to 15% anti-establishment vote between them, they likely won't win any seats at all.
Instead, their role diminishes from kingmaker to spoiler. The research estimates there are roughly 50 to 70 highly marginal, closely contested seats across the state where the margin of victory will be razor thin.
By siphoning off 5% of the vote here and 8% of the vote there, votes that would normally go to the AIADMK to punish the ruling party, the TVK and NTK will likely just split the anti-incumbency vote.
By doing so, they inadvertently hand the victory right back to the ruling DMK.
It's an incredible paradox. Their desire to completely overthrow the system might actually be the exact mathematical mechanism that keeps the current system in power.
And ultimately, it all comes down to resources. The researchers point out a brutal, undeniable truth. Modern elections require massive, almost incomprehensible amounts of capital.
To quote the academic paper directly, nobody today has more money than the BGP and the DNK.
The ultimate question for the 2026 election is whether the sheer, raw, unpaid volunteer enthusiasm of the TVK's digital fan base and the fierce ideological zeal of the NTK's cadres can overcome the traditional massive financial and organizational dominance of the established giants.
It is the classic, age-old political battle of passion versus infrastructure. Disruption always requires passion to start the fire, but it absolutely requires infrastructure to finish the job and govern.
Very well said.
And that profound thought brings us to the end of our journey today. We have traced the theme of disruption across the globe. We started with the terrifying geopolitical shockwaves, raining missile debris down on luxury hotels in Dubai, effectively shattering a nation's carefully built oasis branding.
And leaving everyday migrant citizens stranded in foreign airports, desperately relying on state bureaucrats to save them.
From there, we examined the internal friction tearing at the seams of India's national political alliances, watching as parties that smile together in New Delhi deploy bulldozers and parallel relief funds against each other in Kerala and Telangana.
And we've culminated in this massive, multi-layered, generational battle for the very soul of Tamil Nadu.
It is a state caught in a high-stakes standoff between entrenched, data-driven political machines armed with clipboards and gas cylinders, a fiery, pure nationalist demanding uncompromising ethnic purity, and a cinema icon attempting to leverage a massive app-driven fan base to execute structural reform.
It is a vibrant, chaotic landscape where the old rules of engagement are being severely tested by new technology and new demographics, but the old powers are refusing to yield an inch of ground without a fight.
I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over as you go about your week. We live in an era that is increasingly, almost exclusively, driven by algorithms, instant digital communication, and massive viral celebrity followings.
But does traditional, granular, grassroots organizations still hold the ultimate trump card?
Think deeply about the contrast we just discussed at the end there. If a global cinema icon with a dedicated custom built app, millions of YouTube views, and a claimed 15 million digital members can mathematically be defeated by a traditional, unnamed, low paid party operative checking off names on a paper clipboard to find exactly 124 missing votes in a single rural coastal village. What does that tell us about the true, unglamorous, and deeply mechanical nature of modern democracy?
It's something to think about the next time you hear a pundit talking about a digital revolution.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And remember to keep questioning the world around you.